let's say that we have the fraction 9/10, and I want to add to that the fraction 1/6. 1/6. What is this? What is this going to equal? So when you first look at this, you say, oh, wait, I have different denominators here. It's not obvious how I add these. And you'd be right. And the way to actually move forward is to find a common denominator, to convert both of these fractions into fractions that have a common denominator. So how do you think about a common denominator? Well, a common denominator is going to have to be a common multiple of these two denominators, of 10 and 6. So what's a common multiple of 10 and 6? And it's usually simplest to find the least common multiple. And a good way of doing that is start with the larger denominator here, 10, and say, okay, is 10 divisible by 6? No. Okay, now, is 20 divisible by 6? No. Is 30 divisible by 6? Yes. 30 is divisible by 6. So I'm just going through the multiples of 10 and saying, well, what is the smallest multiple of 10 that is divisible by 6? And that's going to be 30. So I can rewrite both of these fractions as something over 30. So 9 over 10, how would I write that as something over 30? Well, I multiplied the denominator. I'm multiplying the denominator by 3. So I've just multiplied the denominator by 3. So if I don't want to change the value of the fraction, I have to do the same thing to the numerator. I have to multiply that by 3 as well. Because now I'm just multiplying the numerator by 3 and the denominator by 3, and that doesn't change the value of the fraction. So 9 times 3 is 27. So once again, 9/10 and 27/30 represent the same number. I've just written it now with the denominator of 30. And that's useful because I can also write 1/6 with the denominator of 30. Let's do that. So 1/6 is what over 30? And I encourage you to pause the video and try to think about it. So what did we do to go from 6 to 30? We had to multiply by 5. So if we multiply the denominator by 5, we have to multiply the numerator by 5 as well. So 1 times 5 is 5. So 9/10 is the same thing as 27/30, and 1/6 is the same thing as 5/30. And now we can add. And it's fairly straightforward. We have a certain number of 30ths added to another number of 30ths. So 27/30 plus 5/30. Well, that's going to be 27. That's going to be 27 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5/30. Plus 5/30, which of course is going to be equal to, what is this? 32/30. 32 over 30. And if we want, we could try to reduce this fraction. We have a common factor of 32 and 30. They're both divisible by, they're both divisible by 2. So if we divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, numerator divided by 2 is 16. Denominator divided by 2 is 15. So this is the same thing as 16/15. And if I wanted to write this as a mixed number, 15 goes into 16 one time with the remainder 1. So this is the same thing as 1 and 1/15. Let's do another example. Let's say that we wanted to add 1/2 to 11/12 to 11 over 12. And I encourage you to pause the video and see if you can work this out. Well, like we saw before, we want to find a common denominator. If these had the same denominator, we could just add them immediately. But we want to find a common denominator because right now they're not the same. Well, what we want to find is a common multiple of 2 and 12. And ideally, we'll find the lowest common multiple of 2 and 12. And just like we did before, let's start with the larger of the two numbers, 12. And we could just say, well, 12 times 1 is 12, so that you could view that as the lowest multiple of 12. And is that divisible by 2? Yeah, sure, 12 is divisible by 2. So 12 is actually the least common multiple of 2 and 12. So we could write both of these fractions as something over 12. So 1/2 is what over 12? Well, to go from 2 to 12, you multiply by 6. So we'll also multiply the numerator by 6. And we see 1/2 and 6/12, these are the same thing. 1 is half of 2, 6 is half of 12. And how would we write 11/12 as something over 12? Well, it's already written as something over 12. 11/12 already has 12 in the denominator, so we don't have to change that. 11/12, and now we're ready to add. So this is going to be equal to 6. This is going to be equal to 6 plus 11. 6 plus 11 over 12. Over 12. We have 6 twelfths plus 11 twelfths is going to be 6 plus 11 over 12, which is equal to 6 plus 11 is 17 twelfths. If we want to write it as a mixed number, that is what? 12 goes into 17 one time with the remainder 5. So 1 and 5 over 12. Let's do one more of these. This is strangely fun. All right. Let's say that we wanted to add, we're going to add 3/4 to, we're going to add 3/4 to 1/5, to 1 over 5. What is this going to be? And once again, pause the video and see if you can work it out. Well, we have different denominators here, and we want to find this. We want to rewrite these so they have the same denominator. So we have to find a common multiple, ideally the least common multiple. So what's the least common multiple of 4 and 5? Well, we'll start with the larger number, and let's look at its multiples and keep increasing them until we get one that's divisible by 4. So 5 is not divisible by 4. 10 is not divisible by 4. Or perfectly divisible by 4 is what we care about. 15 is not perfectly divisible by 4. 20 is divisible by 4. In fact, that is 5 times 4. That is 20. So what we could do is we could write both of these fractions as having 20 in the denominator, or 20 as a denominator. So we could write 3/4 is something over 20. So to go from 4 to 20 in the denominator, we multiplied by 5. So we also do that to the numerator. We multiplied 3 times 5 to get 15. All I did, to go from 4 to 20 multiplied by 5, so I have to do the same thing to the numerator. 3 times 5 is 15. 3/4 is the same thing as 15/20. And over here, 1/5, what is that over 20? Well, to go from 5 to 20, you have to multiply by 4, so I have to do the same thing in the numerator. I have to multiply this numerator times 4 to get 4/20. So now I've rewritten this. Instead of 3/4 plus 1/5, it's now written as 15/20 plus 4/20. And what is that going to be? Well, that's going to be 15 plus 4 is 19/20. 19/20, and we're done.